Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today we're going to be exploring something that might trigger some folks, but it also might set some of you free. I hope that we can navigate this conversation together with an open mind, open ears, and an open heart. Today we are asking the question, does transphobia really exist in the world? My name is A Pariera. I'm a trans man and I'm a philosopher who challenges gender, identity, and reality. I have been on my self growth and healing journey for the last 7 years of my life, which includes a period of time of coming out as a trans man in 2017, also deciding to detransition as a trans man in 2017, go on this inner journey for the next 7 years of my life, just to return back to my truth as a trans man in 2024. And today with me, I have my friend.
Hey guys, I'm Alex. Um, my journey is a little bit different to A, but essentially it comes back down to the same thing of discovering the inner world, and this is the reason why I transitioned. 3 years ago, I started to question my gender. I've been quite unhappy my whole life, didn't know really why, until I heard a podcast, and that's why I feel like these conversations are really important for us to have. It can free us free. It can set us free. Um, and so yeah, after hearing that podcast, I sort of embarked into that journey of discovering what gender means and means to me. And here I am 3 years later, fully free in my gender, in myself, and having this conversation with A today. And I think the idea is we want to explore a little bit the truth about transphobia and in a way that no one really talks about. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
I'm excited as well. Let's share some of our intentions for this conversation today before we get into such a heavy topic, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So let's be clear. In this conversation today, we don't want to deny any lived experience, but we do want to help shift perspectives and awaken others to maybe something higher. We also want to explore empowerment beyond oppression, but we don't want to deny the oppression that exists in the world today. We also just want to dial in on that question, what if we didn't internalize this hate from the world? What would
Mm,
that look like?
mm.
So as we
I
dive into this today, go ahead, Alex.
I was just gonna add, I think for me that's the most important question here today is what if we didn't internalize that hate? What could that look like? So yeah.
Mhm. And what does that mean too? And how do we actually shift gears and start going there? We'll dive into all of that in this conversation. I feel like that's the last thing that we'll probably touch on is like the tools and how do we actually start creating this new world once we can start to see transphobia in the way that we'll be discussing today.
Mm.
So let's dive into the very basic question here. What does the word transphobia mean to us? Would you like to go first?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, uh, to me, transphobia means that someone doesn't understand. It's a fear caused by misunderstanding. It's a fear caused by um, there's something that wants to come up here, but it's stuck. I think misunderstanding someone is if I don't know what you are and who you are and what you represent, then automatically I will fear you. Um, and so that becomes a whole lot less scary when you put that into perspective for me than the big word transphobia. That sounds really scary.
Mhm. Definitely. Yeah, I think it can come from a lot of misunderstanding. And I think too, for me and my experience and through the inner work that I've done and to see the way transphobia plays out in the world, I see it more as a universal experience. So what I mean by that is I see it as an internalized phobia. What if we remove the transphobia, right? Like everybody has these internalized fears of themselves, other people, and the world at large. And where does that actually come from? And are we actually all writing the same narrative within and projecting that onto different groups outside of us, but it's actually the same internal experience. So what I mean by that as well is transphobia isn't a fear of who I am. It's a fear of who you might be underneath the surface.
Yeah.
So my
And that,
existence
yeah, go for it.
my existence might trigger something you fear in yourself. And this doesn't mean that everybody in the world is transgender. But what this does mean is there's parts to everyone's humanity that has yet to be tapped into, that has yet to be touched. And because I've done that work and I represent that with confidence and clarity and alignment within myself, that could trigger something in someone else of a fear of, maybe I hold some of that. Maybe I want to be that confident. Maybe I want to do that inner work. Maybe I am more of a feminine guy. Maybe I'm more of a masculine girl. And seeing that outside of me projects that fear of my own self. So I don't actually hate the people out here. I hate myself, and I'm projecting that onto you. So that's kind of how I've seen this transphobia play out over the years and in my own experiences. Although it's very transphobic, it's also very universal phobic.
Yeah, and I think that's
What's
really
coming up
important
for you?
to touch that on that. It's like um the the transgender experience is not unique to the rest of the world. And like that universal fear of whoever expresses what out in the world, and that just the freedom that we specifically like trans people um experience by aligning ourselves with like our truth is definitely that. And I know I held some of these fear within me, and call it transphobia if you will, but it was just the fear of being free.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It truly is. And like trans people, and not just trans people, but anybody, but I feel like, especially, trans people, like when you're walking in that truth, it can just really trigger somebody to realize about how much not truth that they're walking in.
Yeah, and
You
it's
know what
things
I
like
mean?
100%. It was like for me it was like the fear of also not understanding what freedom really meant. I was like, I had this idea of freedom is this concept, and okay, I think I got it, but really, like, underneath it all, I really didn't get it because I couldn't put my finger on it. I was like, what even does that look like? I can't, there's nothing around me at that time that I could really feel free in. And so I was fearful of that because I was like, I really don't know what freedom looks like. And to me, it's like that concept that's way out there and that I can't touch. And
Mhm.
I think there was a bit of jealousy in it as well, seeing like, why can you have this and why can't I have this? And so projecting that outwards means hate, essentially.
Totally. Yeah. And that brings me into like the next area of like, how has like transphobia landed and existed in your own self before coming out, and how was that experience for you?
Mm. Thing for me, there was always this interest of like, wow, these like for me it was these people beforehand. It was like, wow, like I'd love to have a conversation with them because like they are sparking some interest to me. And I never did because there was that fear of probably also getting some truth that at the time I was not probably ready to hear about
Mhm.
myself. And so it was easier to be like, nah, like they just keep them at a distance. And the moment, and it was like it was fine until it was in my world. It's like I'm not homophobic, but if it's my son or my daughter or my child, then I have a problem with it. It was a little bit like that for me. It was like I have no problem with trans people, but they're not part of my world. And at the moment I sort of started questioning my own gender, I was like, holy like, um, I rejected it. I was so scared of it. I was like, nah, there's no way. Like, I'm not walking. And I think my narrative was, I'm going to be hated because, and like when I did the work, it was like, I'm not going to be hated by the outside world. I was hated by myself. I was like, nah, I can't have that for me.
Mhm, mhm. I really resonate with that. I rejected
Mm,
it for so long. I mean, that whole 7 years of detransitioning, that's why I call it a detransition, even though in a higher perspective, I do value and honor it as a part of my evolution, and I truly do on a deeper perspective see it that way. But because I was using, the narratives that they handed me, I still really use that word because it helps people
mm,
understand like how much I rejected my gender identity for those 7 years. Like those 7 years, I was working on my identity, yes, but I wasn't working on my identity as a transgender individual. I wasn't working on my identity as a trans man. Like that wasn't the perspective that I was carrying through
mm,
my inner work journey. I was just working on myself as a soul. I was working on myself beyond these labels, beyond these boxes and constructs that we've created in this world. So I wasn't thinking about gender like that at all during those 7 years. I completely put it in a box and threw it to the side and said, I don't want to open that again. Seriously. Because when I had transition, what I told myself is honestly that this world is better off without my truth. It is actually better for me to keep this to myself and figure out how to live that way. So that's the belief that really drove my self-discovery and inner healing journey. So it wasn't a lack of growth that happened, it was just the lack of acknowledgement of my truth during this growing and healing that occurred. So
mm,
during those 7 years, I'm mentioning all of this is because I was rejecting myself as a transgender individual every step of the way and trying to validate myself with what the world told me to do, which was love yourself for who you are. You don't need to change your body. You don't need to change all those things to love yourself. And that's why I come from this space now of learning to love myself and learning to transition from a place of love rather than hate, because it took me 7 years of pulling back these layers of narratives, of denying myself and my existence. Because even though, yes, I'm a transgender individual, I don't necessarily, and I know, Alex, you can resonate with this too, but I don't necessarily fit the mainstream narrative of what it means to be transgender. I don't really fit those check mark boxes that they go through. I will not, at this point in my journey, label myself with gender dysphoria. I don't have gender dysphoria. I'm experiencing discomfort in the world because this world doesn't make space for anybody that is outside the boxes that they have created for us. It's uncomfortable for most of us. Most of us are experiencing dysphoria. So I won't label that for myself. And there's other things that I'm doing a lot differently as a conscious and healed soul in this world when I do my gender transition. And so I mention all of that because it took me so long to get to this space of accepting my transness and this wholeness and trusting my intuition instead of somebody guiding me how to take steps in my own journey. I won't do that anymore. And because of that, I feel very separate from my transgender community. So it had caused a lot of internalized transphobia for 7 years. I didn't believe that I could be trans. I believed that, the community would reject me. They still reject me a lot to this day. Like there's so much that I had to start to work through last year when I came out as a trans man again. It was all of this internalized homophobia that came up to the surface to be healed. It was all of this like internal hate that had up in this last year that needed to be healed. So when I think about internalized homophobia for my experience, it's still like it wasn't like too long ago that I had just healed all that stuff. So it still feels so fresh. And it feels so important to mention that all of that in this conversation today because I hope that for the listeners, anybody out there that feels like they are questioning their gender, or if they're just questioning their identity and just feel different from the average or from the typical person, like it's okay. And if you feel different and separate from a transgender community, from an LGBTQ community, you don't always have to fit every single box. And I think that's what I'm trying to say here is that's how I've been able to heal this internalized homophobia towards myself is like I started to say I don't need to be in a specific trans box just because I am transgender. I don't need to fit the typical spiritual narrative just because I'm spiritual. So, what I've come to terms with in this whole journey of healing my internalized homophobia is being a self-governed individual. Like you can govern your thoughts, you can govern your emotions, you can govern your choices, you can govern your decisions, you can govern the relationships you allow or don't allow in your life. You can govern the finances that you create or that you don't create. You can govern the career that you have or the career that you want to go make dreams happen. Like you are actually in control of all of this, and I think that's a lot of our fears of ourselves is like we're in so much control that it's actually scary. So, because I've taken control, I've released a lot of those fears of being afraid of myself. And because I've released a lot of those fears of being afraid of myself, I've released a lot of fears of connecting with other people in my truth. Because for me right now, walking and talking as a trans man individual, I want to be very clear. This is me living out my deepest fear. And I truly mean that. Every single day, I am living out my deepest fear by living in my truth. It is the scariest thing I've ever done in my journey. It was way easier to wear a mask and say, I'm a mask lesbian and keep this to myself and go run a business and change lives. It was so much easier to wear that mask because it allowed me to cover my truth. But now that I'm out in the open, it feels so vulnerable. It feels so raw. Like now I really understand what it means to walk in your truth because I thought I was kind of walking in my truth then. But to compare it to now, I'm like, no, you weren't. You really weren't. You were wearing a huge mask.
Yeah. And it's important to really acknowledge that as well. Like it is definitely easier to hide behind the masks, like
Mhm.
100%. But the liberation that comes with that vulnerability and that rawness of the truth is beyond what I ever could have expected and imagined. And I think that's worth talking about. 100%. I really like what you said earlier about like it touched on like identity as a whole and not just as a gender. And it's like
Mhm.
we like every single human being on this planet has experienced some sort of conflict within themselves with an identity. And identity has so many different layers. It can be physical, it can be social, it can be um, anything, your career, your gender, your appearance, your anything at all. And so I think like it's really important to notice that we are as like transgender individuals, we are healing ourselves as human beings, not as trans beings. And that's where I think you and I agree on, and that's what makes us slightly different from the rest of our community, which can feel really fucking lonely. Yeah.
Mhm. Definitely. Well, this is so powerful. Like coming full circle moment too. I hope the listeners are like getting to the root here. And I hope that, yeah, I just really hope that it's coming clear to the other side of this because the root of
Mm,
this all is like the way to heal transphobia, right? Isn't just to connect and tell stories and, go out and educate and advocate, or sorry, go out and educate and advocate and all that stuff. That's a part of it, but the actual root of it is healing your internal humanity yourself,
mm.
and transphobia will naturally be healed.
Yeah, or it will be less present, I guess. Like, I think it's also important to notice that there are hate crimes out there. Um,
Mhm.
but I think we also project that outwards in terms of like, because I'm trans, this is a transphobia act. To me, hate crimes are just crimes against humanity, period. There's no like, like it can happen to a certain category of people, and then we just put that in a box, and then we by doing that we actually amplify the fear, and we feed the perpetrators and the aggressors because that is juicy for them.
Mhm. Mhm. Definitely.
Mm.
Definitely. And sorry, that is what I meant. That is what I meant to be clear. It's like, how do we heal? Like, how do the trans folk heal this, right? like as transgender individuals, I hope that we're all, I would hope as a community that we're all clear that the only way to heal the world is to like heal ourselves and like lead by example. I hope we all understand that as transgender individuals, because it's a very sacred role that we walk in this world as trans people. And yeah, I take that stuff very seriously. So as transgender
Yeah,
individuals, very clear, it comes with healing within ourselves. But also for the transphobes, I can't help them. I could sit here and talk my story, talk my shit all day, but that's not going to help them. What's going to help them is looking in their own mirror, in their own face, and doing their own healing, and then they won't hate me anymore. Trust
100%.
that. I really trust that. That's how it works.
Yeah.
Because if we want to get into like examples of transphobia, like some like, okay, so I turn my comments off on Instagram. I just don't, I've just used that tool to my advantage. I just said, I'm just going to turn it off. I'm not here to debate. I'm not here to have conversations. I'm not here to just let people walk all over my platform, my mission, and my message. So I just decided to turn them off. And it's been working very well, and I'm grateful. However, before that, it's just like complete nonsense. And I'm just going to share some examples here. Like the one that everybody gets is like, you're still a girl, your chromosomes are this, blah, 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 this. Your mannerisms look like a woman. Everybody knows you're still a woman. Like, all those comments. But when I read those comments, they are not actually affecting me because I understand human potential and I understand human transformation. So when I see those comments, what instantly comes up in my reaction is, wow, what a sad thing that somebody must have told this person about their own identity at some point in their life, and they internalized it so much that now they use it to weaponize other people. Because once upon a time, there was a point in their life that somebody hurt them with that very statement that they're trying to hurt you with. So it really just, if you can start to see it in that lens, you see that it's not an attack towards you. It's a lack of healing within themselves. And for
Mm,
that perspective, it's really helped me just see it from an enlightened perspective. Like I just don't engage with it. I don't let it affect me. And I really truly mean that. I have the right tools to deal with it. And I was dealing with it. And the way that I was dealing with a lot of it up until I just decided to turn the comments off was just block and delete, block and delete, block and delete. And that worked, but like it just doesn't stop.
yeah.
So I was just like done.
Mm. I think that's very smart on your side. And like you said before, you're a sovereign being and you're in control and you get to decide what lands in your field and your bubble and your safety and what doesn't. And I think like that's what a lot of us have been told, and that narrative that we have is that we're not in control and we are a victim of the society and that we got to take it. And it's like, I'm not here to deny my biology. I'm not here to deny that I was not a girl when I was born. That's not it. It's just like I've evolved like all human beings on this planet have, growing up and explored themselves and evolved into a different version of themselves. And it's like this is my version today. And whether you like whatever your opinion is on that is not gonna like affect that. I'm not here to deny who I was. I'm just here to exist as in who I am right now.
Exactly. And with those people online, like you can't go and say what Alex just said, because I will tell you, I have tried. I have
Mm,
tried. I am very compassionate and eloquent when I talk and I speak and write comments back to people. I'm a very deep thinker. I do take my time. So I take these comments, and some of them I was like, you know what? This might be worth my while. I might be able to change some perspectives. But I spent a lot of time on some comments. It didn't, none of them worked out that way. None of them.
no, I
So I'm
think
doing
like
that because, like, the best way to heal transphobia sometimes, I mean, on a social media sense, if it's not in your direct environment and if you're not, being harassed in your household and stuff like that, that's a different story. I'm talking about social media. But on social media, like, you really just have to ignore those people. If you want to be outspoken and if you want to help heal humanity, if you want to share your transgender experience, or even if you're queer and if you want to get online and help the world understand us more, like you're gonna have to just get in the routine and get in the habit of just straight up ignoring those people because they're not there to have conversations. They're not there to understand. They're literally just there to shit on you. That's what they're doing. And honestly, they have so much time on their hands that they could be healing, but instead of healing, they're sitting there harassing people. And I want to hopefully open up the perspective too that this was never a divide of cis people and trans people or queer people and straight people or blacks and whites and this and that. It's never been this war that the world makes you think it is. What's actually happened, and it does relate to this conversation of transphobia because it's not us against, it's not us versus you kind of thing. What's actually really happening is the divide, the true divide in the world is on one side, people are willing to grow and they're willing to heal. The other side of the coin, they're not willing to grow and they're not willing to heal. That's the true divide in the world. And if you can really understand that and invest more of your energy, time into people that are growing and healing, that is how we genuinely change the world together. But if you spend all of your sacred, amazing energy, and if you're somebody that likes to grow and heal, thank you, because it's people like you that truly make a difference in this world. But if you are that sacred human that grows and heals, do not waste your time on people that are not willing to do the same because it won't help change the world. But if you put more of your energy into the people that are, that ripples and that ripples and that ripples so much that we can get rid of this transphobia or that we can get rid more of this hate and these lower vibrations that we're seeing so much in the world today. But somehow we have to get higher and we all have to get higher together.
Yeah, I think there's like, whether you're on a healing path or not, and you're deciding to do it, like, A and I on online and openly or quietly behind closed doors, it doesn't matter. You don't have to be visible and on social media and all of that. I think what's really important is like, let's open up the doors for the people that actually want to heal, and let's focus on that. Because what if being trans wasn't wrong, and what if you actually believed it in the at the core of yourself? Then I believe that an attack can is only an attack if there is somewhere it can land. Meaning that if I throw you, like if I throw a bullet or something, if it has nowhere to land, then there is no attack. The bullet hasn't even, like, it's just evaporated somewhere. And that's what, from my perspective, and I think you'd agree with me on that, A, is like we're just trying to not give a place for the attack, the comments, the hurt to land. And if it doesn't land, then the energy dissolves completely. Try to attack someone that doesn't respond. You get bored and you just eventually stop because it doesn't work anymore. When you're nagging someone, and on the other side, there's no charge. The tension just dies, and that's how we kill it rather than trying to fight it. To me, fighting against, we're just giving it more energy, we're feeding it, and we make it bigger. Let's transfer that energy into the healing and the growth and the dissolving that energy.
Definitely. I agree with everything Alex is saying. And I want to be clear too when we're speaking, both Alex and I do very deep work in ourselves. We don't bypass anything. We're not telling you to ignore these things in the world. We're not telling you to bypass your feelings. What we're telling you to do is actually acknowledge yourself in transphobia at a deeper level, would you say? Like acknowledge I'll use myself as an example. I had to acknowledge that I was carrying hate in the world. I had to acknowledge that I was carrying judgment in the world.
Mm,
So I had to sit with myself. You know what I mean? And it doesn't feel good to know that I was carrying those thoughts about myself. There's also a grieving period that you go through, realizing that you treat yourself like that on the inside. So,
mm,
and then to get to the other side of that, you have to work on rewiring your mind as well with the thoughts. And so you consciously choose to shove out the beliefs that aren't serving you. So ones that are filled with hate, judgment, assumptions, things like that. You go through this healing process, and then you also go through a rewire process. You consciously get to choose the beliefs that you create. And when
mm,
you start to learn this process of you consciously choose your beliefs, that means you also consciously choose your reality. And when you start to consciously choose your beliefs and replace transphobia with self-love and truth, you start to experience a different reality outside of yourself. None of this happens overnight. This might take you a month, this might take you 3 months, it might take you years. Be patient with the process. There is no timeline for healing, there's no timeline for rewiring. Just trust the process and hold faith. That's all I got to say.
100%.
So
And
with all of this to say, I just wanted to tell our listeners, like, we do the work, we have the tools, we have strategies. We're not ignoring the reality that exists around us, but we're trying to help everybody enlighten themselves to get to this level where they can have a healthy detachment, not an arrogant detachment, not an ego detachment, but like a healthy, deep level understanding of detachment.
mm,
And it
hmm
takes doing the real work. I wanted to mention that because I was just thinking like, oh my gosh, like we're just going off about like transphobia doesn't exist, but like I want to make sure the listeners understand we don't bypass anything. We've done a lot of work to be able to talk in these ways as well.
100%, Luke. And I think, as much as I believe transphobia doesn't exist, I believe phobia in on a human level and hate exists. And we're just dissolving that energy by doing all of that work that you just mentioned. And I think like, it's really, really, really important to mention that. And you know, you I think if we want to be honest here, it's like it's a lifelong journey. It's not, it doesn't take a month or 3 months, or it's just like once you start deeping into it, but you learn to fall in love with the process, and the again, like the freedom and liberation that comes from that is worth all the hard work and all the like the rewiring. And I think I like rewiring more than the word healing, because to me healing means that we're broken, and I don't want to subscribe to that narrative that we're broken. We're not broken. We've just subscribed to a narrative that told us that we were broken. And I choose to unsubscribe that shit.
And right there, you consciously are choosing your beliefs and the words that you use to shape your reality. So just an example of what I was mentioning to the listeners. This is how Alex shapes his own reality. This is how
Exactly.
we all, and it's a universal experience, like I was saying. This stuff is deeply personal, but it's also deeply universal as well. We all have the power to shape our beliefs and shape our reality. As much
Mm,
as you want to deny that, it exists within you and it's available to you at any time.
100%.
And
Mm.
I agree, like, the healing and like, yeah, seeing it as like not fixing and stuff.
Yeah, I
Because that
think
is the
for
narrative that we take on, right? Like they're all
yeah,
narratives.
yeah,
And if you
and
realize that you're taking on narratives and if you question them, you can make them your own, just like
you
you've done.
can you're allowed to challenge absolutely anything you've been told before. And I think like for me, what you touched on it just a little bit before is really important. And I think that's where we also want to dive this like sort of drive this conversation towards is what are the tools that we can also like as lived experience, what can we share with our audience to learn how to do that. And for me, what you touched on just before, and that's been the biggest game changer in my whole journey, was self-acceptance. Like I was willing, and it was ugly. I didn't like what I saw, but it's like you have to go through that period of seeing what you don't want to see and accepting it. It's like I've seen these parts of myself that I was like, why even, like, I thought I was a pretty open-minded human. Why am I carrying all this shit? Why don't I like, this and that and whatever? And it's like I have to admit that I did not want to be transgender. And I avoided it for as long as I could by hiding behind a non-binary and, compromising. That was good enough for me because I was so scared. And underneath all that, I mean, that's probably a topic for another conversation. For me, it was like I was scared of identifying and saying that I was a man, because what I thought of being a man meant, and the toxic masculinity that I've seen growing up and around me, I'm like, if this is being a man, I don't want to be that. So that's probably another topic, but it's like there's all of that I had to sort of get out of me, and it was really ugly to see. I was like, fuck, I'm not as open-minded as I thought I was, like, and you got to sit with that. For me, that's self-acceptance, being willing to see the ugly parts of you. It doesn't make them go away, but it just allow them to be there. They're going to be here whether you want it or not. These parts, like you can't ever get rid of them, but acknowledging them and giving them what they need is the way to be able to actually be like, okay, you're here and I'm going to keep you here because I can't get rid of you, but I'm going to give you some love and I'm going to focus on this part of me that is also my truth, and that's what I want to project out in the world. And just changing that was an absolute game changer.
Hmm. Hmm. Self-acceptance is a huge one.
Mm.
Hmm.
And it's not hard. It like you know it's challenging and it's uncomfortable, but it's not hard. Everybody can sit with themselves and start looking inside and be like, what is the part of me that I don't like? And take that. What is in my environment, my external environment, what is it? Is there something that I don't like? Is there someone that's triggering me for some reason? Someone is being loud, it's triggering me. Someone is being this, it's triggering me. I don't like that person because of that. Look at that and then look inside. And
Hmm.
that's the start of the journey of self-acceptance, self-discovery, and that changes everything.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Powerful stuff.
100%.
I think another big one, and that goes into self-acceptance. I think, a lot of rewiring is a lot of just rewiring our self-talk, going from like being shameful to more empowering, going from more ego to more soul, going from more sad to more happy, going from more negative to more positive, going from more logical to being more open-minded. Like you're just kind of switching your narrative in all different areas and intricacies of your identity and how you experience the world. And it takes a lot of time, and self-acceptance is a huge part of that, and so is self-compassion and like holding that space for yourself and being
Mm.
able and being willing to acknowledge those thoughts without any judgment. As soon as you judge your judgmental thoughts, you go backwards. It's just you're allowing that cycle to play out. So you really have to learn
100%.
a three-step method that I tell my clients. It's super simple. Is one, just notice the thought,
Mm.
say, "Oh, that was rough. That was something. I saw that one. I noticed it. I'm pausing with it." Don't judge yourself. Second step, don't judge. Just hold the space and replace it right away. And if you can start doing that every day, moment by moment, thought by thought, you're going to start to see something shift little by little. But the most powerful thing about rewiring and self-acceptance and self-compassion is it's not just some abstract idea. It's not just a wild concept. Because if you take these ideas and if you take these concepts and if you actually start to apply them and start to rewire your thoughts, the coolest thing about it is you get to see the real life experience play out in front of you. And once you see these changes actually start to play out in your reality, that's where you're like, oh shit, this stuff actually works.
Yeah.
This wasn't
Yeah.
just made up. And
No, it's
then
not.
you keep going and it kind of gets addicting because you actually start to feel good about yourself. Who would have thought? And then you
100%.
actually start to get more confident and like comfortable with connecting with people and connecting
Yeah.
more with the world. And who would
Hmm.
have thought? But it's all through that rewiring of the narrative, right? And you just have
Mm.
to be willing to do it consciously and repetitively and every single day of your life. Like Alex was saying, like you don't just do the stuff and you're fixed. The way that I guide a lot of my clients is like it's a whole lifestyle upgrade that you're going through. Like you're choosing to live this way now. If you want to be conscious and if you want to grow and evolve, you're gonna have to do things differently, which includes actively rewiring your thoughts as soon as they come up in a negative way or a judgmental way.
Mm. And
So
I
that's the
want
very
to,
first step. Go ahead.
yeah, and I want to add here because I think for a lot of clients that I've spoken to and everything like that in the beginning of the journey, they're like, wow, like this is going to take me forever. And a lot of people get discouraged by starting this journey and this process because they're like, it sounds like too much work. And I want to also reassure people that if you're really committed to that journey, I've seen shifts in my clients after 1 month, like 4, 5, 6 weeks of starting to work together. They've experienced the change in their journey. And, if you take that on the scheme of your life, what is 6 weeks to start seeing the benefit and ripping the benefit of what that change can do to your life? It's really not that much, but it's a commitment.
Definitely. Yeah. And I really feel like that's all that it takes is like that commitment. Like you have to say, I'm going all in. There's
That's
no
it.
other way. And you
Yeah.
just have to go.
You don't need to know how. You just like there
Nope.
is the steps are simple, and there are ways
Right.
that you can get supported with that, but it's just like that commitment of like, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to be willing to be uncomfortable. That's the main thing. If the moment you start getting uncomfortable and you just turn away, then nothing is changing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
If we take that back to transphobia real quick, like
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
rewiring and the internal dialogue and that internalized hate that we take from the world and even the internalized trans narrative that we take from the world. And if it doesn't resonate, we take it and we internalize it and we start to believe things like, your trans body is wrong. Is it really though?
Mm.
I've really had to sit with myself in that journey. And I feel like it's been so enlightening.
It really has. I think like we have a superpower here, and that's how I reframed the narrative of me being transgender a year ago, where I
Mhm.
believed that I was a victim, and I was like, at the moment I was walking into a room, I was going to get misgendered. No one was going to see me, no one was going to hear me, and like those stories that like were on repeat. And so I created that reality. I was like, well, I walk into a room and no one sees me, no one hear me, no one understands me, and blah blah blah. And I'm wrong, and I'm always going to be alone, and I'm always going to be different. And it's like, well, look around, everybody is different. Like, and so it's like you're not that special. And I had to take myself out of that as well and be like, you're just a human having a human experience. And I made that label a superpower. Like me being transgender is actually opening up so much, and like the inner work and the self-love that I had to sit with and actually like go through all that work in reflecting that just me by walking in the world is is having an effect, and it touches people, and it changes my immediate world, whether I speak to people or not. And that in itself, that's how it changed the world. And so I reframe and I rewire that narrative of like me being transgender is bad and is wrong, and it's not okay to. It's actually a superpower, and I have so much to offer this world.
Absolutely. I think it is so sad the trans narrative that's out there. Truly. I
Yeah,
really do.
100%. It breaks my heart.
I really think there's a better way. I don't think it has to be that way at all. It's
No,
it's sad what the system has made of our experience. It shouldn't be that way for
it
anybody,
sh
truthfully.
it shouldn't. And if we keep, I think like you and I on the same page, it's like it shouldn't be that way, and that's why we do that work, and that's why we loud about this, right? Because it shouldn't be that way. We all agree, and also too many people just sat in this. It shouldn't be that way, but okay, what do we do about it? How do we
Exactly.
change it? Because it shouldn't be that way is not going to change anything.
And that's why we need more leaders in the world today. So if you're sitting at home watching things and thinking, wow, these people are great, and if you're watching self-development and like watching other things online, get off your butt and get out here with us. I promise you, we're all scared
100,
doing this thing, doing it. Like I'm scared every
100%.
single day I'm doing it. I'm still doing it, and I do this inner work. But like I say that because like I stand by what you said so wholeheartedly. Like we're so past the times of education and awareness.
Mm,
Like We are in the digital age, guys. We are way overwhelmed with information. If you want to go get access to education and awareness, you can get it wherever you need it. We need leaders that can help you take the right actions to get you to where exactly you want to go. We don't have leaders out there in the world that know how to go deep in themselves, live in their truth, live in happiness, live in purpose, and live as a collective where we're all raising each other up while raising ourselves up through the process. So if we don't have that outside of us, we're never going to find it. So we really do need more leaders out there willing to provide services, products, and even just a perspective. Even if you don't want to go out and sell or help, if that's not your jam, that's cool. But if you have a perspective or something hard that you've been through and you've been able to get to the other side, your voice could literally save somebody's life online. And I truly mean that. So
Mm,
if you've been thinking about it, debating about it, any of that, like just go do it because your voice is so needed in the world today. We need more leaders willing to lead the way.
yeah, yeah, I definitely agree with that. Are you throwing out an invitation for someone to join us on this conversation, eh?
Hey, throwing the invitation out there. If you would like to join us and if you have a perspective, feel free to reach out to one of us and we can talk about a potential collaboration for sure. Because I'm always open to more perspectives and yeah, all of that.
Definitely.
So
We need more conversations like this.
we do. Um, but going back to like believing, trans is wrong and all that stuff, I wanted to also just touch on the transphobia narrative, right? Like if transphobia is that bad and if we're taking on this narrative of like hating our bodies and needing to reject our past and calling our former names dead names and all of this stuff that we've been told to do in our transgender experience, doesn't that sound a little bit transphobic? I don't know about you guys, but it sounds transphobic to me personally.
I would
Like
agree with that.
I really pushed my truth out of my body so that I could detransition to understand it in a higher way because yeah, I really took on those narratives. I hated myself, I hated my body, I couldn't even look at myself. I was angry at the world and I also got in that space of like I don't want to be a man either. Like if that's what a man out there means, like I don't think I fit that box either. So I also had to do a lot of those layers. We can save that for another conversation because I agree that's a whole nother topic and a can of worms.
Yeah,
But anyways, like, yeah, it just sitting with that trans narrative and thinking about what it means to be transphobic. I felt like I was sitting with transphobia in my body when I was taking on the trans narrative and going in the way that they were telling me to go. But then in healing over these 7 years and now sitting with myself through this process of coming out the second time and sitting with my truth through all of this inner work that I've done, like I've really had to heal a lot of those parts. I've had to remind myself like there's nothing wrong with you. Like your body is fine just the way that it is. And if you want to change it and align with it, that's great. But like you can still appreciate it right now. Like we don't have to, I don't have to sit here and shit on myself and shame myself and reject myself. Like I personally, not just as a transgender individual, but as a human being, I would much rather sit in my room at home and figure out how to love myself and figure out how to like support myself on this journey than sit there and shame myself and feel like I need to go out and fix and change and do all of these things. So it's been this process, but
I
it's
think.
been so enlightening because I even
Mm,
recently coming out, I'll be very vulnerable right now, but like even in this last year of coming out, I dabbled with that thought of like, well, what does it mean if I don't have a penis? Like, what does that actually mean?
oh,
Am I actually less than? And I kind of like was attached to it for a little bit. I had to sit with that belief and like just I sat with it. I had the awareness of it. I wasn't judging myself. I was just curious. And
mm.
it took, I don't know, like probably a few weeks with me sitting with that belief. And what it came down to is like, well, who said that there's anything wrong with a man with a vagina? Like, really?
I mean,
That's just
we
another
get to
narrative that's
we
having
get
the
to
world.
rewrite absolutely anything, right? Like some people believe the grass is blue if they, if that's what they want to believe, that's, why not? And like, who am I to tell you that it's wrong?
Exactly. So like it's a lot of that that's the rewiring that took place though. Is like what is wrong with me being a man with a vagina? Like can I own that? And can I feel whole in that? And I started to like lean into that and lean into that. And I've come to this space like of full acceptance of my body. Like I'm actually okay. Like I still plan to get top surgery when that day comes. It's going to be divinely placed, and I trust that. But I'm in no rush. And then when it comes to like my bottom, like I'm actually surprised because when I first came out last year, I was like, oh, I'm gonna need to pack and all this stuff. And like when I was going out and like picking my daughter up from school and all this stuff, I would always be like super self-conscious. I was like, is anybody like looking at me down there when I'm wearing sweatpants? Like what's going on? But then I would get home and then I would think like, why do I have those thoughts and why the heck would anybody be looking there in the first place? Like if
Yeah,
you're looking down there in the first place, that's the
there's
problem.
something
Like
wrong
I
with you.
yeah, I'm like people actually shouldn't be looking down there, so I shouldn't be self-conscious of these things. I'm like, why am I even worried
100%.
about somebody looking down there? Like
Yeah.
you shouldn't in the first place.
Eh,
So, anyways, going through these stages in my journey of like allowing this internalized transphobia to come up and heal, it's just been so eye-opening. And I've got to this place of like, I don't feel like I need a packer now. I don't feel like I need those things. I feel like now it's like it's like a bonus. You know what I want? If I want it, that's cool that I get to have it, but I don't need it. And that's a really
mm.
good feeling.
And I want to add something on that as well, because I've experienced like I wear a packer from time to time, and I've experienced that. And in the beginning, it was very much I'm wearing it because it helps me be seen as a man. And truth is, people still misgender you with a packer on because people don't look between your legs like most people. Let's be honest, and thank fuck. Um, but it's like only you is aware of that, and it's like now I wear it because it makes me like the way it makes me feel, and it's more like the fit of the clothes and like it's an internal thing, but it's not like, hey, look there, I'm a man, you know. um and it's a very different experience, but it's like I think for me what hurt me really deeply is that when I was being misgendered and I was wearing my packer was like no amount of external like gender affirming care is essential for us, but it is not going to change your internal world. And we've had that
Mhm.
conversation before, and it's like, you know, going on hormones and getting top surgery and getting bottom surgery even, it's like if you still hate yourself inside, it's not going to change that. It's going to help in the world, but it's not going to change that. And I think that was the lesson for me there. It was like I'm still getting misgendered and people still don't see me. Even I've had top surgery. I've been on T not for that long, and it's not yet showing massively, but it's like, you know, hormonally, like things are changing. I'm wearing a packer, I'm wearing, you know, man's clothes, and I like people should see me as a man and they still don't. And it's like that reflection is like, well, that's not on me. If they choose to not see me is because they can't see themselves, and that's okay. um but it I had to go really deep within to be able to be okay with that, because I thought doing all these things would change how people responded to me, and it really didn't until I changed the inner dialogue.
Mhm. It's that's so powerful too. And I think that's just yeah, just a powerful space to come from. And I just
Mm,
wish everybody in the world can experience like what that true alignment really feels like from the internal, right? And I think that's like kind of like the theme here of like my experience versus your experience is like just making sure that it's coming from the inside of us rather than coming from the outside of us.
mm,
And it sounds like for both of us, when it was coming from the outside, and if it wasn't going the way that we thought it was going to go, we would sit there and align our inner reality in a way to move us differently.
And
And
I
that,
think like you and I both have a really different path, and like we're really different people, and we come back like we meet in the same space of nothing has changed until we've actually seen ourselves and changed the inner dialogue that was going on, and shifted the hate inside and the phobia inside.
Mhm, mhm.
And that's the whole, I think that wraps up quite nicely that conversation that we've had today around like does transphobia exist if it doesn't exist within us.
Mhm. Mhm. And speaking about like all the rewiring and like shifting narratives today, I think we should end today's conversation and help our listeners out a little bit. Like, what can we, use instead of transphobia? What can we use to see the world differently? Not to ignore or dismiss or bypass what's going on in the world, but what's a better word choice that might, free somebody of that perspective? Any ideas?
That's an interesting view. I mean, I'm not sure about a word, but I think to me it's more an attitude of like if there is something that, and it's again, it's not, it isn't transphobia. It feels transphobic because that's the way you receive it. For someone like for my partner that is very like, she's a cis woman and she's very aligned with that, that comment is not going to land for her, and so it isn't, that's not the truth, it's how it lands, so it feels transphobic to me, not to anyone else. And so for me it's like, how do I approach these, and can I first observe that this is how I receive it? And for me that's the first step. Like, we can't change it all like this in one day, but it's like, first notice when something lands in you that feels transphobic and ask yourself why. Where does that come from? Um, for me, it's more an attitude than changing a word. I don't know if you have a word that you can help us with, but yeah, I'm not. Yeah,
No, I don't. I was just going to brainstorm with you on the spot, honestly, and I think what you brought in was beautifully said. I think it is more about I think it is more about an attitude and a mindset and being willing to like have that pause with yourself and have those inner conversations to really, shift things and change things for yourself. Um, I think I would like to just add on to what Alex had said as a second step, because I think that as a first step is so crucial. Like, challenge your own beliefs first, challenge your own bias first before, because a lot of people do it opposite. They say, oh, well, they're just projecting their inner world on me, so I just won't even deal with it. And that's bypassing.
100%.
Because, like, yes and no, right? Like, it is true, but sometimes it's a way to bypass and just toss off responsibility. So check
And
in
it's
with your
going to
own
show
bias
up
first.
later.
Yes, it will. So check in with your own bias first, but after you do that, and you do check in with your bias and you align yourself and ground yourself and find something that is more true to you, I want you to just bring in the lens of what if, this is more of a reflection of their own internal hate against themselves. Like, how can you, one, check your own bias, but also see that this interaction right here that's happening as transphobic is actually mirroring back to where they won't meet themselves inside. And if you can see it like that as a second step, the very last step I would guide you to is, how can you affirm yourself in the moment? How can you validate yourself in the moment instead of attach something inside of you to this narrative of this person, you know, projecting
Mm,
their own internalized hate onto you, making you want to internalize more hate. And then you guys are just in the sharing hate cycle. So notice the internalized hate that's being projected onto you as a mirror, and then find ways to validate your own identity, because you actually are valid as you are, as
mm,
much as you say you are, though.
mm,
So that is your job to do. It is nobody's job. I'm so sorry. If we all could have a sidekick by our side that validated us and did this inner work, oh, all Hail
I'll
Mary. I
take
think we
it.
would be safe. But we don't. So I mentioned that because you do have to validate yourself. You do have
Mm,
to empower yourself, and you do have
mm,
to use those moments to rewire and say, no, I am valid. I do see this as them and projecting their own internalized hate onto me, so I'm going to walk forward with my truth, and I'm going to wish them happiness and healing.
mm,
Boom. Bye. Bada bing, bada boom. You don't think about it and you hold yourself accountable to that boundary.
mm.
And
I'd
I
love
feel
to
like
share.
if you could do that, go ahead. Do you
Yeah,
have anything else to add to those three steps?
I think it's just like I'd love to share a quick little story around that to make it a little bit more like less maybe abstract and a little bit more concrete and like real for people.
Definitely.
Last week I went to get my tea shot, at the doctor's office. So you'd think, they know I'm coming in here to get testosterone. Like you'd think they sort of like have a bit of a clue of what's going on for me. Um, and anyway, I walk in and after getting the shot and everything like that, the receptionist speaks about me to the doctor or something. Anyway, and she misgenders me. She said she calls me she, and I was like, that's really interesting. And I think like because of the work that I've done, it didn't land in me. I noticed it and I was like, didn't feel attacked by it. I just noticed it. And then I was like, okay, it's not emotionally charged anymore. And I simply corrected her and be like, no, it's he. Um, and because there was no emotional charge in, and I was not attacking her back, like because she wasn't attacking me in the first place. It's like she just said, "Oh, okay," used the correct pronouns and moved on, and that was the end of it. And like that's what's possible when all the steps and what A spoke about is, is applied. And that was a very short interaction and a very efficient and like, really free of pain and anything like that. But it hadn't always been that. And it's like go through the painful moments of like taking it, what feels like transphobic, what feels like an attack, and notice that and try to like with experience, with time, it's like alchemizing that and changing that into actually this is how I would like you to address me, the same way someone misheard your name and call you, I don't know, whatever, Alexi instead of Alex to me, you know what I mean? Like I'm like, no, my name is Alex actually, like, you know what I mean? And that's it. And it people just like, oh, okay, cool, and move on. So that's like a real sort of example of what is possible and what happens when you do apply these steps.
Yes. I was just gonna say, like those moments, like that moment is just what makes the inner work worth it, right?
100%. I was like,
Like,
I'm just affirming myself in this world as a human being, and that's it. There's nothing more than that. I'm not anything more than just a human and being validated and seen, because that ultimately we all want that, no matter who you are on the planet.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. So I love that perspective that you brought in that example. I think that really wraps us up today. This was
that's
really
beautiful.
powerful.
Mm,
I really hope that the listeners out there were able to take something new away from this conversation. And for the listeners out there, I would love to hear if anything came up for you during this conversation, during this video. Me and Alex do sit and read all of our comments, and we will be sure to respond to you. So if you have any thoughts, any additional perspective, or any further questions, we would be happy to answer those down in the comment section. You can find me on all my socials across the board: Instagram, TikTok, Substack, YouTube, LinkedIn, you name it. This is A Pariera, and I will put that below. Where can the people find you?
yeah, amazing. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. I don't have a whole lot there yet. Anyway, but my name is a little bit more difficult, so I can tell you now, but I probably just will write it down and you'll find me.
Woo woo! Great conversation today.